Hello everybody, welcome to tonight's stream. Tonight is going to be a special night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am going to be continuing on with Gil Elvgren. This is probably going to be the final special stream for Gil Elvgren's influences. But I will return and possibly even tonight show you guys Gil Elvgren's book, where it all started from, why I chose to do all these special intros. So stick around for that. That's going to be after Figure Drawing Basics, which I am going to be continuing on with tonight. So this is where I left off yesterday. For this past week, maybe 2 weeks, I'm going to say, I have been predominantly doing hands. And there's a good reason for it. Hands are very difficult. They're very expressive. They're very animated as well, I think. Not just through the gestures, but because there's multiple fingers at play here. You know, with face movements, I think it's a little bit different. You know, when you're moving your eyebrow, when you're moving your mouth, when your face is moving all around, there isn't so much... I guess they don't protrude out as much as fingers do. And because fingers protrude out of your palm and, you know, they're elongated, everything else on the face is pretty much on the face itself. It doesn't really protrude out as much. I think maybe the nose does. But anytime you make certain face expressions, it's just a difference in the lines that are somewhat flat in comparison to how fingers are. And once again, because they are protruding out, because they're so animated, and there's so much curvature to them as well, it becomes really challenging when you're dealing with them in perspective. They're long, right? The entire hand is long. It's also not too wide. So, you know, when it comes to perspective, it becomes really challenging. You know, if your hand is curled, there's so much that's going on in play. Each and every finger has its own focus in a way, and in relation to other fingers as well. And any moment you misplace, or you don't draw the line a certain way, you don't include the nail, or you draw the nail incorrect to the perspective, it automatically just breaks the drawing. So it's very challenging. And I guess one of the reasons why I have been doing it for 2 weeks is just to emphasize, I guess, how important it is to continue to practice hands as much as possible, all over the page, everywhere, as much as you can. Test yourself to do it from imagination as well. Dedicate a really good amount of time to grasping them, understanding the relationship, getting the nuances, you know, knowing how the fingers are in perspective in relation to one another. So all that stuff is incredibly important. So I'm going to continue on with that today, and starting Monday, I believe I'm going to be taking on a new approach. But maybe, you know, I'm also going to do a little recap. Why not? I'm going to do a little recap about using basic shapes to construct the human figure. And part of it is also going to be a challenge. Now, this is done from imagination. This is done from memory. I'd rather say it's done from memory. So, just again, to demonstrate how that's also important to be able to do it. So as you can see, I'm really starting out with basic shapes. The cylinder shape is the most important shape, next to the circle being the starting point for the head. And I'm just going to continue on using the cylinder shape to construct the body. And it becomes a lot less intimidating knowing that that's where you're turning to construct the figure. You're turning to these shapes that you've practiced over and over and over again, and they're in the most simplified form. So it makes it less intimidating. You know where to start, you know where to go, as opposed to completely being clueless as where to turn to construct this. So just using this simple shape, all these simple shapes, I was able to create an animated figure, animated figure drawing. So I'm going to do another one right here. You guys could find a lot of these poses in the previous streams. I'm gonna say, what are we up to, 120 now? I'm gonna say it's somewhere in the 80s maybe. And just you guys could just like flip through all that. For those of you who are tuning in through Twitch, you can head over to the video section and filter it based on collection, where it will open up all the folders, basically all of the folders for the previous streams that I've had. They're all saved, and you guys can catch up. Now, I'm not spending too much time on the poses, and a lot of this is also helped by understanding proportions. Something that I also covered, I'm going to say that's like in the 30s probably, streams or parts, part 30 all the way up to part 40 possibly, and I talk about all the different measurements, using the head as the unit of measurement to make sure that everything is correct and proportionate, and getting your eye used to seeing things like how long is the leg supposed to be in relation to the body, how long is the head supposed to be in relationship to other features of the body. All that is pretty much covered in those streams. I talk about each and every one of them, and by practicing it, you get used to I'm gonna do a little collision here and put the leg behind this hand drawing. Yeah, by practicing it, you just get used to seeing the figure in such proportion, recognizing how the body is supposed to look, how are these individual parts supposed to be in relationship to the rest of the body. I'm going to practice scale as well. I'm going to try to scale it down a little bit. using the cylinder shape to comprise this figure. Wanted to give it some expression, some sort of drama in the pose. I think that's one of the things that I really did enjoy about, well, I guess, Jack Kirby's work and as well as John Buscema's work. Like that era of comics, I think they really were good about body language, you know, having the body express itself in all these really dynamic poses. I think it makes it so much more fun. What I have noticed a lot when it comes to some choices that artists make when it comes to poses is they tend to look very magazine-like. You know, like the models, they just, the way their body language is, it just kind of looks like some sort of studio shot of a person, you know, and they're just posing for like sexiness or something. There isn't really much that is being said by their body language. And it almost started to take less and less importance as people focused on creating these like sexy looking poses and anatomically correct figures. But I think all of that plays a role. Like you do want to make your characters look appealing. You do you want to make sure that it's anatomically correct. And you also want to make sure that there's something fun going on. So I'm just quickly notice the speed really comes into play because throughout the entire time while I'm creating this, I'm thinking simple shapes. You know, I'm thinking how do I simplify this? What are the most simple shapes that I can create to express the figure? Not paying attention to the surrounding as much, you know, or especially the previous drawings. This is an old sketchbook. These a lot of these drawings suck, and I feel okay just like working over them. It's not a big deal. That's the entire point of the sketchbook, is to be able to just freely flow and let the moment take you, sort of, instead of being way too conscious of everything that's around. So that's just kind of like, I guess, a recap to demonstrate how you can use simple forms to create the entire body. This is incredibly useful when you're just starting to create your piece. You know, let's say you're coming up with this idea. You're not really sure how big it's going to be, what the limbs are going to look like. You know, what's the expression? You know, as I was just talking about it, what's the expression? What does it want to say? this is a really useful tool because you're not getting into detail, you're not spending too much time, you're still in this mode of like discovery, like figuring out placement. Maybe you'll want to move the arm around to a different location, give it a better expression, change some things around. You could do it without having to worry about oh no, like I don't want to mess up this piece. I spent so much time perfecting it. I don't want to mess it up. So that preciousness isn't there. You're not overly concerned about that image yet, since you haven't really invested that much time. So perfect approach. You can, as you saw, like scale it up or down really, and you could do really small ones everywhere, and that'll allow you to just quickly create the feel, the gesture, the language, the body language, the action that's going on. The smaller it is, the faster you can pump them out, right? So you don't want to spend too much time on it. And then once you find the pose that you like, then you could, then you can run with that. You can take it and start perfecting it more, start refining it more, changing certain things around here and there. So very useful tool. It's not just for beginners. This isn't just for people who are starting out. This is used even with advanced artists because of its simplicity, because of how quickly you could generate something. Listen to me, I'm talking about generating after this whole AI fiasco that's going on right now. There's something good about it, and then well, honestly, I don't really see the good in it yet, but one thing I'm apprehensive about now is how strict imagery is going to be. So the internet, I feel like, is going to become even more restrictive because of this. The usual tactic coming from people who just, they hate the culture, the artistic culture, they hate it, or they're jealous of it, or whatever, is like something spiteful. So if, let's say you tell them like, no, you have to be more strict about it, now they're going to do everything incredibly strict. So they're going to do double the strictness, just despite the situation, because they've been presented with a roadblock to their profit. So I think that's something that might end up happening. You'll find less and less images available for you to just enjoy. Not to sell, that's the thing. It's like, to sell is one thing. To say like, oh, this is my work and it's based off of somebody else, and then you use it and you try to make money off of it without the consent. This is what the real problem of it is that it's done without consent. They're just taking all that information, generating all these images, and basically just robbing the artistic endeavor. Less people are going to be able to make a living off of it because of this, like, oh, well, I could just quickly hire somebody to generate things. So people who don't really care for the industry and they just want to use it for their product or whatever it is, whatever their project is, they're just like indifferent to what's going to happen to that industry, and they're just going to be like, oh, I just care about my product. And they'll hire all these like AI generated things as opposed to hiring people who've developed the craft. So what's going to happen in the long run? Let's say this continues, less and less people are able to make a living off of it. At some point, it's not going to have images to generate because nobody's going to be creating these images. There's going to be like this stagnating point, because the creativity isn't being generated anymore. And not only that, but the whole adventure of art and discovery and self-expression, that's also going to be starved as well. They're basically not going to allow people to pursue that stuff. Everything's going to be about coding. So when you're only thinking about it in terms of profit, once again, the toxicity of capitalism, then you're negating the experience itself. Like what kind of people are generated from it, people who are in tune with reality as opposed to just being consumed by capitalism. That whole spectrum. So there's a lot more problems that come from it than there is reward. And I mean like societal problems. I don't just mean for illustrators or whatnot. I think, I think that the model that's present now for music, for example, I'm using Pretzel, but it's not allowing me to play all sorts of music. It's music specifically designed for this, with a consent. In some ways, like, I'm sure that people who are doing this, they're also getting paid. They're submitting their music to this. There's a certain level of compensation for it. There's a sense of recognition. I think, if anything, one of the things that should be a requirement when it comes to AI generating is that it should include which artists it consumed, basically, to generate the image. So credibility, credit where it's due. So that way, artists who did contribute to that, obviously with compensation to it because their work was used, would also get the discovery. That they would get the, like if somebody liked it, they're going to be like, who did it? I'm always curious. Whenever I see something that I really like, I always want to find out who the artist is. I do a little bit of digging. If I see something that's popping up in photos or whatever, I'm always interested to know who it is. And of course it's biased because I am so into illustration, into comics and such. But it's not only that, it's just this idea that if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be enjoying it. So I'd like to support that. I'd like to support what I ended up enjoying by including them in description or whatever else. Okay, more hands. But tell me what you guys think. What's your opinion on it? What do you think is the best way to go about it? Leave your comments or send a message. I think, first and foremost, though, they should absolutely sue all these companies that are creating these images, that are generating them without consent, without compensation. I think all these artists, especially renowned artists, they have resources, they know people. I think they should, and of course they could influence other artists to join them on it, with their reputation, basically. I'm sure that they could get even more people, and more people would trust whatever it is that they would create. You know, let's say they do a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe or something that says, hey, it's combined as artists, we are going to hire a lawyer that's going to sue these companies. This is, you know, how much it's going to cost. You know, this is, we're hoping to do it by X amount of time. Keep people updated. That would be interesting to know what the process is like, where people stand when it comes to the lawsuit, what's being said, you know, what the result would be. I think it would be pretty interesting, and also, like I said, it would give people the opportunity to say, like, nope, you're not going to just do it without repercussions. Like, you either respect the industry and the people who are creating all this stuff for you, or you don't get to produce any of this stuff. But yeah, just sue them, tell them that if you're going to be using any image that you're going to be using, you have to include it in a description. You know, you have to say that it's AI generated. You cannot say that, you know, you created it, because it's a conglomeration of a bunch of artists who did it. You know, that similar argument, which I thought was pretty clever. It really did point it out. You know, somebody who orders a pizza and they say, I want all these toppings on it, and then the person comes and delivers it. That didn't make them the cook. You know, it didn't make them the person who created the pizza. They just said, I want this, this, and that. You know, going to a restaurant and ordering a meal and saying, I want this, that, and the other, it doesn't make you the chef. So, you know, these people were like, oh yeah, I'm the artist who created these images. No, you just copied a bunch of people's work and then claimed that to be yours in some way. So it's a lot of plagiarism. It's a lot of exploitation. Once again, another thing, another instance that shows how exploitive capitalism is. They're not doing it because they want to learn a skill. They're doing it because they want to make money. And they know that images that look well, especially, you know, when people could just download it and get their portrait done, of course they're gonna bank on it. They're not gonna go and sit down and create that portrait. They don't care about that. So yeah, just shows how, once again, repulsive that culture is. Another hand here using basic shapes. I'm going to start with the circle for the palm, or rather this area right here. This is an important area. Notice how it's not just the thumb moving from the palm itself, right? It's not just, you know, attached to the palm, and the palm is like inanimate almost. This section, this whole section is attached to the palm. The rest of this right here. And that allows the thumb to move and have so much mobility. So it's something really important to notice. And the other day, actually, I saw another drawing that is fairly decent. Like, it was a fairly decent drawing, but the way that the person was curling their fingers around the object, they were holding something, it showed that 4-step curling. So like 1, 2, it's 3 stages to curling your fingers. It's not 4, but they had like an extra section here and then here and then here, so it folded 4 times in. But really, as I said, it's 1, 2, the top of the fingers, 3, and that's a fist. That's it. That's as far as it's gonna go. There's no more folding there. But they made that mistake, the classic mistake of having it fold 4 times. So it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, and each one of them had a joint there. So I don't know, it looks like a hexagon almost. I guess it's kind of hard to explain. But I guess next time I see something like that, I'm gonna show. I'll take like I'll display it for you guys to see exactly what I'm talking about there. It's a very, very common mistake. It's a big pitfall for people who don't practice hands at all. You know, they're just kind of guessing their way through it. But once you fix that mistake, you'll get better results when it comes to drawing hands. Much better results. So notice now that I've kind of just like established the basic shapes, the biggest shapes. I'm now getting into the details, and I'm starting to form it more, giving it more definition. I'm going to draw through the fingers to make sure that the object makes sense from the top all the way to the other side. Kind of looks like this hand is like sticking a straw up this guy's nose. Why not? Let's do that. And honestly, I think, while we're talking about all this stuff, I think the illustration culture really needs to come together more. You know, people who who really establish themselves, you know, they're big names, I think should create more resources for people to be able to get jobs as illustrators. You know, create an entire community of ways that people can generate income. Basically starve the beast. Instead of having a bunch of people being like, well, I guess I'm just going to go and work for some corporation, they'll have these resources to go to and, you know, start making a living, having a reputable company that creates that. A safe space, because there are other options currently, but they're more geared towards people who are clients rather than freelancers. They're catered more towards clients that are freelancers. For example, like they would make it okay for somebody to post, let's say, a job for $5. They're like, hey, for $5, I need you to make 20 images by tomorrow or something, and that's accepted, you know, and that's totally normal. And I don't think that is that's a good place for illustration. That's not a good place for people pursuing that. It basically creates like a race to the bottom sort of thing, you know, where somebody's gonna be like, I'll do it for $3 or something, and you know, that becomes a thing. And of course, also outsourcing. There should be one that is strictly in the States, that isn't outsourced, because, you know, the dollar value is a lot higher in other places. So of course somebody else is going to be like, yeah, sure, I'll do it for $5, because $5 is like $80 or $100 in my country or where I am. But I don't think that it should be exclusive. I think like there should be other apps, right? There should be apps that allow that as well, but I think there should be one dedicated specifically, maybe even for the country, not just the states, but just this idea of like for the country itself. That way, this outsourcing thing won't be a problem. All right, let's see what other. Filling up this page here, it's almost completely done. Trying to see what other drawing I could do. That's there, this is there. All right, let's go with this one. Notice I am keeping a distance from the tip of, let me just make sure that it's in vision, because I am guilty of sometimes doing that, not even realizing how it's slowly creeping off sight for you guys. There's only just a few places for me to do. There's like one up here that I could do, I think. There's like one here, maybe. And then another here. And then maybe one here. So I'm just like placing marks for hand drawings that I can continue to fill up this page in. Okay, just getting back to this one. So this is the palm. This general shape here is for the fingers. That's another one down. I'm gonna do one here, here, and then here. And I believe, ladies and gents, that's gonna be it's gonna be it for this week. I'm wrapping up the week by filling up this page for figure drawing basics, and then I'm gonna have I'm gonna be streaming the special intro, which is gonna be a continuation of Gil Elvgren, something that I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the stream. But for those of you who are just tuning in, that's coming up next. The special intro is coming up next. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And probably it's going to be the final one as far as influences, Gil Elvgren's influences. There is a couple of more names, I think, in the book itself. You know, predominantly it has a lot of his work. And it just does like a quick little, I don't know, 30-page synopsis of Gil Elvgren and his history, basically, in illustration. It's really interesting. I really enjoyed reading it. So yeah, I might be actually getting into the book tonight. It really depends on how far I get into each image, how many more images there are left. I'm also kind of getting used to the chaos of what's going on over here. Yeah, I think that's really important as well. You know, not well, to train your eye to be able to see all the lines that you want within other lines around. I think it's really useful. It's also really useful for when you're creating comic book panels, because it's not all just going to be like open space and everything is isolated. There's going to be a lot of it overlapping. There's going to be a lot of objects that overlap. There's going to be a lot of figures that overlap one another. You want to, as I mentioned before, you want to make it as interesting and dynamic as possible. So this kind of allows that. You know, you're just you're focused. You know, I'm focused heavily on where I'm going with each line. And it also helps. There's like multiple things that help, either drawing lightly, right? And then gradually pressing down to define the lines that you really like on top of the light lines. Or as you can see here, I'm using blue lead. So that blue lead, which I'm a huge fan of, allows me to distinguish the lines from, you know, these lines right here made by the regular pencil. I think it's just mastering the pencil as well, being in control of it rather than it controlling you in a way, right? Because if you can't switch up the pressure that you put on the pencil, it means that you're just using it only one way. You know, that it has such a hold over you that you can't you can't light up. You can't lighten up. You can't, well, loosen up rather. Loosen up your lines. Loosen up your drawing more. But that takes some time and patience and being conscious of the choice. You know, being conscious of the choices that you're making with the pencil. Being conscious of the fact that you're pressing too hard at the moment. You know, you're not varying your line strength. It's all just the same. But then once you gain more control over it, drawing becomes more fun. You know, you have like, you're doing all these things and you know, you're shifting from one way of drawing lightly to pressing a little bit more firmly to drawing lightly. It's all within your sort of conscious effort, which makes it pretty cool. I really enjoy that. I think it's a really fun state of mind. Alright, y'all, I'm gonna do one more here, but I don't even think I'm gonna get a chance to finish it. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna use these basic shapes. To do it. And hopefully comes out right. Can I do it again? I think I'm gonna be fine. I got like 4 or 5 minutes left before I gotta take a quick break and prepare for the next stream, the special stream. No, I admit I like this old drawing, so I'm gonna try not to overlap it. That was a failed nail placement, and it broke the finger. Time for the eraser. I try to avoid the eraser as much as possible. Nope, still not right. It's facing the camera more. So it should be somewhere there. Smaller nail for the third, or the ring finger, I guess. It's getting close. It's getting pretty close. All right, that pretty much finishes it up. For figure drawing basics, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys have a great weekend if you're not going to be tuning into the next stream, but if you are, stick around. I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break, and I'm going to be back for the special intro about Gil Elvgren's final few influences. So stick around for that. If you guys did enjoy this content, just make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. All right, everybody, I'll see you in the next stream. Hello, loungers. Welcome to the Art Lounge Alley. This is the project stream part 82, but really this is a special intro, special stream rather, because it's going to take up the entire stream, where I talk about Gil Elvgren. Gil Elvgren is one of my favorite artists. He has incredible skill in rendering the female figure and a lot of things. This is something that I'm going to discuss in just a few minutes. I'm going to show you guys who Gil Elvgren actually is before really jumping into all the influences. For those of you who are just tuning in for the very first time, if you've never heard of Gil Elvgren, this is a great opportunity for you to catch up. You could also catch up by, if you're viewing this through Twitch, you can head over to the video section and filter it based on collection, and there you will see folders pop up. One of them is going to be special streams, and by clicking on that one you will get access to all the previous Gil Elvgren episodes, all 1 through all the way up to 8. So I believe this is part 9 of Gil Elvgren, so you can catch up. All of them are worth it because I talk about many different artists that have influenced Gil Elvgren. I go over their history, I talk about illustration history, I show you guys their work, and I talk about each and every painting individually, what's unique about them, what's beautiful about them, their techniques, what they were influenced by. It's a lot, and they're all very unique. So if you guys are interested in art, if obviously you would be you're tuning in because of that, so I think it's well worth the time to actually check those out and make yourself familiar with all these other illustrators and painters that also influenced Gil Elvgren. All right, y'all. So without further ado, here is Gil Elvgren. I'm gonna give you guys a brief history about him. For those of you who are just tuning in, so you kind of have a better idea of what you're getting into. Like, what's all this really about? So Gil Elvgren was the most important pinup artist of the 20th century. One of his most recognizable works is from his Coca-Cola illustrations. Elvgren's Coca-Cola subjects portrayed the American dream of a secure, comfortable lifestyle, but his well-known illustrations for magazine stories often captured timeless scenes that reflected the hopes, fears, joys, and joys of their readers. In the field of advertising, alongside his Coca-Cola work, he contributed to campaigns for prominent American companies and products such as Orange Crush, Schultz Beer, Sealy Mattress, General Electric, Slovenia, and Napa Auto Parts. With his work from Brown and Bigelow, the Coca-Cola, and other national advertising assignments, and his magazine work, Elvgren was much in demand as an artist. His time booked up more than a year ahead of his output. That's how much of in demand that he was. He wasn't like he was searching for work. All that work was pouring into his lap, basically. Elvgren stood out not just as for his paintings and his advertising graphics. He was also notably a professional photographer. You guys will see that in just a few to give you an idea. Long before he attended his first art class in 1933, Elvgren had been impressed by the early pretty girl illustrators like Charles Donna Gibson, Howard Chandler Christie, Harrison Fisher, as well as McClellan Barkley, Haddon H. Sundblom, Andrew Loomis, Charles E. Chambers, and Pruitt Carter. And all these artists that I just mentioned, you guys, that's what the previous streams were really about. We were talking about each and every one of them and showing you guys how unique they all were. So I'm not going to get way more into Elvgren just yet. I want to cover all these influences, all these people who have influenced them, give you guys a little bit of a brief description about them, And then at the end, once I finish with the last influence, artists that influenced them, I will read through all of this, so that way you guys can have like a complete sort of understanding of, you know, who they were, how they influenced them, what really happened. So I'm going to be continuing on with the artist that I left off last time, and that's Harvey T. Dunn. He was really important actually to Gil Elvgren. He was really important to a lot of artists as well. He was one of Howard Pyle's. In fact, why don't I just quickly show you guys Howard Pyle here, because he is another really important name. So take a look at the dates, 1853 to 1911. So it goes way back. And he was responsible for the Brandywine School philosophy. He wanted to create a lot of American-based illustrators, so he didn't really encourage artists to venture out into Europe, which a lot of artists have done. They would venture out into France and other countries as well to study painting, to study art. But his idea was to try to influence artists and have them stay within the States and become illustrators based off of what they see within the States. And his approach was very much a philosophical approach. He talked about life, he talked about politics, he talked about everything pretty much, just to get people inspired. You know, his point of view wasn't so technical when it came to teaching. He wasn't teaching like, you know, this is how you draw hands, or this is how you draw the body, or so on and so forth. It was basically to inspire the artistic spirit, the spirit that is curious, that wants to express itself, that wants to explore and try new different things, and fill up their creativity with all sorts of experiences that they've had or things that they've seen, and express themselves through these visual mediums, whether it's paint or ink or whatever it is. So his approach was a lot more, I'm going to say, intuitive as opposed to technical. And a lot of artists, including Harvey T. Dunn, who I'm going to be discussing right after, have chosen to take that approach. So he was a very important figure. He influenced a lot of people. In fact, his art, the depiction of pirates, which you guys are seeing right now, that was it influenced people all the way up until modern day. For example, Pirates of the Caribbean, the way that the pirates were dressed was based on his depiction. Like, he's well known for the depiction of what pirates dressed like. Like, he was kind of the creator of that image. And Pirates of the Caribbean, Johnny Depp's outfit, it was influenced a lot by Howard Pyle's paintings and his depiction of pirates. So there's a lot that he's done through history that continues to influence people up until today. So that's Howard Pyle. A lot of the artists that I talked about previously were also influenced by the Brandywine School philosophy, and that's something you guys, as I mentioned, you can head back to the previous streams and just remember that name. It'll come up pretty often. So right, that's Howard Pyle. That's his amazing work. Also an amazing painter as well. He's not just a great illustrator, as you saw from his Robin Hood illustrations, Robin Hood pen drawings. He's also really great with oils and storytelling and imagery and composition and color mixing. A lot of this stuff is there. So that's him, the core of people's influence, including Gil Elvgren and other artists like Norman Rockwell. I'm sure you guys are familiar with. But this is Harvey T. Dunn. So just a brief overview of Harvey T. He was an American painter and teacher. and he's best known for his Prairie intimate magnum opus. The Prairie is My Garden, which is a painting that he's done. In the painting, a mother and her 2 children are out gathering flowers from the quintessential prairie of the Great Plains. Dunn was one of the small groups of piles defining students who were to revolutionize the illustration world, and today are collectively known as the Brandywine School. After 2 years with Pyle, Dunn established his own studio and immediately began a successful career in illustration. He was a prodigious painter, able to produce 55 complete paintings. In 11 week, still kind of confused about this one. I wrote this a while ago. To produce 55 complete paintings in 11 weeks for various clients. I'm going to say in 11 weeks for various clients. A contemporary described his style in these terms. He literally attacked the canvas, and sometimes I thought he was going to impale the painting with his brush. So he was a really aggressive painter, but I think it more had to do with his speed. You know, he was just very quick about it. And if you guys pay attention, there are certain parts of the paintings that are very expressive. You know, the lines aren't incredibly definitive. There's something very, I guess, gestural about his work. There's some certain marks that are very gestural. So as you're looking through this, there's some stuff that, you know, don't really, you know, I'll kind of flip through. That are just like in between. You'll have the realism, you'll have him like really taking the time to define features. Like if you look at the features of the woman on her face, right, it's pretty well defined. There isn't this like halo effect. But if you look at other parts of the painting, for example, her dress, the most notable one, even the gentleman in the top left corner and the surroundings, they all have this kind of like halo effect. They're not heavily defined. And I think that's intentional. It's absolutely intentional. It's done in a way where your eye tends to gravitate towards a specific, what he wants you to look at. So he's making you look at the woman specifically and her beckoning or calling out for the guy to come closer. And I think there's something spiritual about it. I think there's like this idea of like an angelic sort of creature, right, or an angelic person, based on how her dress is, like whatever she's wearing around her shoulders. I'm gonna say it's like some sort of veil, see-through veil. It kind of has this like angelic quality to it. The veil almost seems like they're wings, right? And based on the expression on the guy's face, he kind of is stunned, and it's as if though he's looking at something out from another world in a way. But yeah, just going on to other ones, you could see here how it's just both. It's combined as well here. There's a realism to it. There's a lot of color mixture within like the hands, for example, even the face itself. But there's still this like dreamy sort of quality. And I think that's a way to describe his work. There's like a little bit of like a hazy sort of vibe about his paintings that I really enjoy. It makes it pretty unique. And this is where I left off last time. And it's a good representation. As you can see, it's a good mixture of like impressionism, I'm going to say, and a bit of realism as well. Like looking at her hand, both hands actually, and her face, it's pretty well defined. There's a lot of complexity and color there, but then everything else around is just sort of like these expressive brushstrokes, but at the same time, very specific too, right? Because you kind of see the folds of the clothes. You kind of see the drapery of the window drapes in the background. You could see that there's a little bit of fold going on over there as well. So it's a really interesting combination of both, and he balances them out very well. But what I was talking about last time was how expressive and very I'm going to say serene, right? She has this very serene, calm, level-headed sort of look on her face. You know, there's no sign of arrogance there. There's no sign of like angst. There's no sign of a lot of like exaggerated expressions. It's just like a contentment that I think is what makes this painting so beautiful. And her body just suggests this very relaxed pose. So there's like a warm nature about the painting that I really enjoy. But yeah, just to give you guys a brief overview of who he was. Continuing on from there, as Dunn grew in stature as an illustrator, he became interested in helping other artists, as Ada Caldwell and Howard Pyle had helped him. In 1915, Dunn and fellow artist Charles Shepard Chapman established the Leone School of Illustration. All that I'm really doing is carrying on the Howard Pyle idea. This is what Dunn was saying. Howard Pyle did not teach art. Art cannot be taught, any more than life can be taught. His main purpose was to quicken our soul that we might render service to the majesty of simple things. Dunn was not interested in teaching painting techniques. His approach was philosophically oriented, so similar to Howard Pyle. So as he was saying, he was kind of like continuing on Howard Pyle's influence onto others, and the approach similar. He spoke about spirit, emotions, and discourse at length. He discussed his philosophy of life and art, offered group criticism, and strode from easel to easel, discussing each student's work in turn. Dunn also taught at the Art Students League of New York. This is another really common school, or name rather. You'll find that the Art Students League was instrumental to the development of a lot of artists. There were some really great instructors there as well, one of them being Brigman, who's really well known for anatomy. In fact, he has several books that are still available. They're in print, and you guys could learn from there. There's a lot of stuff on there. When I was younger, I wasn't too thrilled by the illustrations, because I guess I was looking for something that was a little bit different, and I really enjoyed Andrew Loomis's work, so my eye gravitated towards him. But as I developed more in drawing, I understood the purpose of it wasn't to elect or inspire a style. It was just very much more of a technical approach to get you familiar with all these features: the body, how it moves, the hands, just drawing as much as possible. So it's still an excellent book. In fact, I might be purchasing it for the sake of that. And also it's cool to have that. It's, he played such an important role in so many artists and so many painters, that it's just kind of cool to be familiar with that as well. But let's move on in his paintings, so I can introduce you guys to the next artist as well. So here is another beautiful painting. He's also really great at being able to, as you saw even from the previous painting, to draw the female figure, to capture the femininity. And there is a certain quality to his paintings, and something that I talk about very often is that sometimes the paintings are even more real than real, or even more real than a photograph. And I think that has a lot to do with the expressiveness of the lines, that the person's emotions translate into their brush, and how they apply it onto the canvas, how much they connect with the subject. It's present within the work. It's something that I think is almost subconscious that we capture. There's this thing that's said, our nervous system is only able to digest so much information. It has a certain amount of capacity to be able to see certain things and really comprehend them. So what our nervous system does is that it just kind of summarizes things, visual information, emotional information. It just kind of summarizes things to make it manageable for us to understand what we're looking at, understand the content and stuff. So that kind of explains the intuitive feeling that we sometimes get, right? Like when we sense something is maybe heating up and it's getting uncomfortable, when there's a sense of danger, or when there's a bit of humor, we understand it without having to go into lengthy dialogue internally to grasp it. It just kind of hits us instantly. We just kind of capture it. So things like, for example, we don't see the reception signal to our phone. It's not like there's nothing going on in between the phone and the signal. There's actually some sort of connection that is beyond our ability to see, but it's present, the same way as air is there, but we can't really see it. But under certain lighting, thanks to science, thanks to technology, we're actually able to see that. It does have its physical form. It's just that our vision isn't able to capture it. It isn't able to recognize it or understand it. So our nervous system is very limited. It does have its capacity. So what I'm basically getting at is that in things like this, when it comes to paintings, that the way that it affects us, or the way that we feel, or how much we connect with things like that, really does have to do with that. It's just like almost sixth sense, right? Like this ability to feel things intuitively, recognizing, let's say, the passion that was present when Dunn was painting this painting and all the other paintings. So yeah, I think again this is a great demonstration of that. It shows the beauty of the female figure, how much curvature it has. There are very delicate lines, like just looking around the hip bone right around there, there's just so much variation there, and there's so much femininity to it. And he was able to capture all these different light sources as well, or areas that are being hit by light. How he was able to render the skin. It's not incredibly detailed, as you saw, let's say, looking at Gil Elvgren's work. You could see that the transition in the skin tone was incredibly smooth. It was well done, beautiful work. But in his own right, again, he has his own way of going about it, and this is what makes it unique. It's not even a matter of who's better, because it's not about that. It's not about who's better. It's just they've gone past that point. They're both great. They're both amazing at painting. It's now just a matter of style, what their aesthetic, how they see things, what they enjoy in the process. And in return, we can appreciate it as well. But there's definitely a lot of craft to it. And I think what's also really interesting about this, and it's something I guess I just noticed, is pay attention to the background. The background is warped. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Van Gogh painting, because the perspective is totally off. Like that's basically the end of the room, I'm gonna say. So it's just showing you the corner of the room while she's kind of laying on what seems to be a flat surface. So she's not in perspective to the way that the room is going. So it creates this, again, it's like this like very kind of a surreal vibe about it. Realistic combined with like impressionism, combined with this sort of fictitious environment. And those blue things that you're seeing, I'm gonna say those are drapes. So that's a window, those are drapes. And they're also kind of like they're more stylized. It's something that you would see in a Van Gogh painting, the way that they're drawn, those like thick lines, dark lines that are present, along with the chaotic sort of colors around it. But it's also done intentionally, because the focus is on her, obviously. The focus is on a woman. And I think it kind of is this like statement of like being in a haze, being totally enamored by her beauty, being enamored by that moment, that everything else is kind of swimming around, like the background is swimming around, the curtains, everything kind of doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense is how beautiful a woman is. So I think that's kind of like what the mood of it is. That's what the understanding of it is. Incredible painting. I think it's very, very emotional, and it's very beautiful. Glad I was able to find it. Here's another one. Here's another example of just that, how he's able to render that femininity. how well he's able to render the skin tone as well. And again, it shows how different it is. It's not the same as what you would see. Even J.C. Leyendecker, if you guys remember what his style was like, it was very, very much stylistic. It was illustrative almost, but it was also combined with realism. Like, he would use these very distinct lines that are very much present, that kind of broke it away from the realism. That's kind of like what Leyendecker's style was like. It's kind of what I took away from it, is that he played around with geometric shapes and, you know, the blank canvas, the white color, to pop the figure out more, but at the same time flatten it by using these very like linear lines all over the body as a way to form shadow, as a way to form curvature, as a way to form volume, but at the same time underneath it rendering the skin color just as you would see it here, or just the way you would see it with Gil Elvgren. That's something to check out, as I've gone on to 2 streams talking about J.C. Leyendecker, because I really, really enjoyed his work. And there's a lot out there. That was kind of the problem with finding Howard T. Dunn's work. There isn't that much. I'm sure that it's out there. There's probably books that are also available on his work. But anyways, so here I think it's also a really beautiful painting. It's less, I'm gonna say, surreal, but there is something about it that I'm also noticing, which is it's a very warm environment. And if you take a look at the background, it kind of seems like he was able to see heat emanating from her body. Like, you could see flames. It kind of looks like flames, you know, the way that he drew it. And you could see the brush strokes. They're just like curling upwards. It's not incredibly detailed, right? It's like just to give you this vibe. But it works well with other features. Like, if you pay attention to the bottom, there are these designs that are on the sofa, I guess, that she's laying on. There are all these little designs, and it kind of works well with what I would interpret as like these like heat emanating paint marks, brush strokes. So it works well with that. And also just paying attention to the colors, right? Like, that blue is really warm. It's a really warm turquoise almost. And the red as well, the yellow, they're all in like that warm tone area. So I think it just kind of adds to that to that feeling that there's like this warmth emanating from her. I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, aside from being able to once again capture the beauty of the female figure. Here is another example of that. I think it's really unique in ways where it kind of looks like a pastel drawing almost. It's like a combination of both. Like, if you pay attention to her legs and the marks that he makes there. And I think also this painting demonstrates both of his abilities, again, playing that middle ground between impressionism and realism. Like, he was able to render her figure with all this complexity in paint, right? And all the color choices on there. There's like so much that's going on. Uh-oh. I think I'm getting some server issues again. Not really sure what it is. All right. Yeah, so if you just look at all those colors that are on there, it's really complex. There's like so much at play. There's all different. Let me see if I could even zoom in on there to just get a better idea. Ooh. There you go. I guess that's one more painting to go. But yeah, if you take a look at her body, there's yellows, there's orange, there's blues and purples. There's lots of white used as ways to like show highlights, areas where the body is receiving a lot of light, and the way it's placed is really well done. Like if you look around the hip area, the light that's hitting that place, it's kind of pushing things further back, I'm gonna say. So it adds to the perspective as her legs are coming more towards the viewer. But yeah, you could see so much complexity, and looking at her face as well. There's purples, there's reds, there's blues, there's whites, orange. There's a lot, So this is something that's so unique about him. But then if you look at the surrounding, right? The surrounding has a lot of gestural marks on there. So again, this like really chaotic sort of painting, but also very controlled. Like he placed them there specifically. The blues that are there, you could see that they're throughout the entire surrounding. From the pillow to the sheets, to the bottom where the sheets are, to the pillow that's above, to the backgrounds. The blues are all present there. The reds are all present. So it just has this like unifying sort of element. Even the pink that's under her legs, it's not incredibly stark, yet it is, right? It's against the white. It's against the sheets that are white. But your eye isn't darting to it because it's pink up against this like white background. Your body, the subject is her, and you're still seeing her as the center of attention. Your eyes isn't gravitating towards the pink or even the blue that's there. So it's so well done, and again, this combination of all these different colors, like having the blue in the sheets as well as having the blue as, I guess, blanket that's there, because of its presence everywhere. The blue paint having its presence everywhere, it, I guess, doesn't make the blue blanket stand out so much. It's cohesive. It really all works well together. And there are also pink elements everywhere, from the background to the sheets to her body as well. So because it's present, it's not stealing the limelight. It's not taking your attention away from her beauty. So again, absolutely incredible work. Very unique. Very different from J.C. Landecker, very different from Gil Elvgren, very different from Howard Pyle or Howard Chandler Christie or Haddon H. Sundblom or any of those other painters that you've seen. It's very much his work. It's very much his own style. So here it is. Something that he's done, and that's something that I wanted to talk about real briefly. He did have incredible fascination with war and armies, which is unfortunate, and that's one of the reasons why you have this photo. There isn't another photo of him, but he was completely enamored by it, and I think it's a shame, considering that he had such an amazing eye and such appreciation for the female figure. Instead going into something like this, I'm not into this idea of war. I think it's absolutely stupid, and it's really unfortunate that people were subjected to that sort of thing, or were brainwashed to believe that that's an option, that's something to do. I think when it comes to that subject, the people who are pulling the trigger are responsible for it, and they always have an option to just say no, not to do that. And there's a reason why people come out with PTSD, because they end up recognizing how awful that was, what kind of an experience that was, and they get traumatized by all of that. Prior to it, it may sound like some fun story or heroic concept or whatever, but once you're in the thick of things, once you're actually there and you're experiencing those things, It's a whole another ball game, and that's what PTSD is. It's that understanding that reality, understanding how their brain was scrambled. You know, if you guys have ever watched Black Mirror, you would know what I'm talking about. There's an episode that specifically talks about soldier life and what happens to people when they come back. It's a really great episode. In fact, all the episodes on Black Mirror are controversial, interesting, philosophical. They bring up all sorts of conversations. So if you guys are looking to spend your time watching something really interesting, do that by watching Black Mirror. Any of the episodes are well worth it. But yeah, it's just, it sucks that he chose to focus on that sort of thing. And honestly, I don't really have much to talk about when it comes to it. I think it's still a really amazing painting. It's very gritty. You know, there's a really gritty element to it, and I think that serves the purpose. Kind of like it just shows what that's kind of about. They're torn. You look at his leg, his pants are ripped open, his shoulders are ripped open, and all of this violence towards total strangers. You know, it's this the people that are trying to kill and fire. They never spend time with them. They don't know who they are. They never talk to them. They just know they're supposed to point a gun and kill them. That's a form of insanity. It's absolutely crazy. You know, I think it's something that happens to people where they're just under the spell and they think this solves problems. You know, meanwhile, you know, hundreds and thousands of years later, after people thinking that's a way to solve problems, it still continues. So no problems were solved. They just continued on. So wasted life, wasted opportunity, wasted experiences on something that is completely destructive and pointless. Doesn't resolve anything. But anyways, so that's pretty much it, y'all. Unfortunately, that's the last one. It just kind of showed what ended up happening to Harvey T. Dent. He was consumed by that nonsense, and ended up focusing more on war stuff. But moving on to other artists. Huge name, big influence, Dean Cornwell. Absolutely love his work. In fact, I'm gonna say he's one of my favorite painters now. Now that I've discovered him as an artist, through all this, I could say he's up there. You know, I absolutely love, just to summarize it, obviously Gil Elvgren. Norman Rockwell is also another favorite of mine. I'm gonna say, who are the other couple that I really liked? Let me just do a review, because we are slowly coming to a close for all these influencers. So I'm gonna say, well, I loved Howard Pyle as well. Andrew Loomis is also really great. McClellan Barkley. For some reason, McClellan Barkley really stuck with me visually. I really enjoyed his style. Really liked how he painted. And I think I kind of enjoyed James Montgomery Flagg. You know, I think I liked his. I liked his pen work. I liked that he also ventured into comics. He was one of the few out of all these influencers to kind of take that approach. Haddon H. Sundblom was great, but I think he's so they're so Gil Elvgren and Haddon H. Sundblom are so similar that I feel like Gil Elvgren kind of covers it for me. But yeah, I'm going to say Dean Cornwell is in that list, along with J.C. Leyendecker. So I do have favorites. Yeah, it does sound like all of them are up there, but really there's been so many. Out of all of them, I'm going to say these are the ones that really stuck out and are memorable. I also really did enjoy Harvey T. Dunn. It's just like I was mentioning, it's so unfortunate that he ended up venturing into like war and supporting wars and being enamored by wars. Yeah. Anyway, so this is Dean Cornwell, and you'll find him being an influence to a lot of artists nowadays too. There's a bunch who are really influenced by him. I'm gonna say George Lucas was also influenced by him, but this is why I'm gonna go over this real quick. So Dean Cornwell, 1892 to 1960, was an illustrator and muralist. His oil paintings were frequently featured in popular magazines and books as illustrations, advertisements, and poster promoting war effort. Oh, great! Yet another one. But back in the day, I'm gonna take note of this. Is a lot of artists were doing this stuff. So, I'm gonna say, well, you guys saw Norman Rockwell had paintings that had that as well. James Montgomery Flagg created Uncle Sam. You know, Dean Cornwell's part of it. Howard T. Dunn was, but it's just unfortunate that all these artists ended up supporting something that is exacerbated by capitalism, is exacerbated by fascist capitalist endeavors. And they got brainwashed into it, that they were sucked into that and started to believe that those things are valuable, those things are worth showing to people, those things are worth creating, art and all that stuff, when really they shouldn't be making it popular. Basically, it's almost the antithesis of the artist spirit, the artistic spirit. That's the antithesis of it. And I'm kind of curious to know like what Howard Pyle's stance was on it. I find myself to be more inclined towards like Dadaism or the values of surrealism, which were totally against any of these things. They found them to be toxic and poisonous and did nothing aside from creating more trauma and creating all sorts of societal ills from it. People coming back from wars, interacting with one another with all these problems, psychological problems, spreads. Those things spread. So you can't wonder where problems come from when you're fueling the machine that's creating them. Basically, people having PTSD, having to come home and create families, and then having all sorts of like spousal abuse issues, because of those things. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse is a way of dealing with PTSD. Not only that, but again, this like slaughterhouse industry, it's the same sort of thing. People having to try to normalize the experiences of like seeing living things suffering and screaming for their life, and being around that energy, that sort of torment basically every day, does something to people psychologically. And the way they numb it out is by pretending that it's normal, lessening the value of things, doing all this stuff to continue and perpetuate something that's unnecessary. We can totally survive as a civilization. We're not talking about individuals living in a forest with no society around. We're talking about modern day society, where we have supermarkets. That's not going to go away, unless again everybody's wiped out. That's a whole other subject. But we have supermarkets, we have all these alternatives, we have access to recipes, really delicious recipes for food that doesn't require any animal products. It's a way to not only value the lives of innocent beings, of loving, caring, innocent beings. Probably one of the most loving and caring beings out there. Animals in general, they're so forgiving. You could torture these poor things, and then they'll still be happy to be touched by human beings. That's how amazing that they are. And yet people find pleasure in mutilating them. It's just sick. It's disgusting. But yeah, all that stuff creates psychosis. All that stuff creates these mental disorders, and people go back into society and they try to justify their actions by convincing others. So they'll get into arguments, they'll come up with all sorts of ways to convince somebody else to think that it's normal. And if they succeed, that person does it, they spread it around, so on and so forth. So all these issues deriving from mass production, overproduction, capital, all that stuff. It's just a lot of problems. It creates more and more of it. And if we want to change things, if we want to see what a world would be like without all these problems, we have to create the change ourselves. We have to stop supporting things that create these problems. And one of the biggest ways of doing it is not supporting capitalism. Finding and creating communities that thrive and create living conditions and prosperity without the need for exploiting people and at the misery of others, and create like fair working conditions, livable wages, livable hours, creating more jobs for people. I think one of the ways to do it, and something that I talk about very frequently, is 5 hours, making 5 hours as the max amount of work time that you would spend. And what that does is it creates split shifts. So you work from 9 to 1, that's one shift, and then another person comes in and they work from 2 to 6, so that's another shift. And then from 6, for people who are working late, for people, let's say, who are going to school, and it could be all sorts of people, right? It could be, given this schedule, it could be people who will go back to school and start learning something new, and they need to work later on in the day, so they could start a job from that time and continue on. Or students, they could go to work, go to school during the day, and then take a shift at night to make sure that business hours stay later. And that creates the need for more people. So rather than one person working 11 hours or whatever, 8 hours, now we have 2 people. And having a bunch of jobs that have that creates more jobs. People are working throughout the entire time. It's a lot easier and smoother to work 5 hours and then go home, as opposed to working 8 hours and hope that the clock runs out soon. It's just, I think it would create a lot of opportunities. People would be more educated. They would be able to go and enjoy themselves and learn things and still enjoy their time to themselves, as opposed to what it is now, where you go to work, you come back, you immediately have to eat, you immediately have to do something because you only got 2 hours to yourself. If you do the math, you come back home by 6 o'clock, you eat, it's already 7:30, 8 maybe, and then you got 2 hours left until you get 8 hours of sleep. So it's total exploitation for the sake of making more money for all these deranged sociopaths. I went on about it because of these war topics and stuff. But anyways, so going back to Dean Cornwell. At the peak of his popularity, he was nicknamed the Dean of Illustrators. He studied in New York City under Harvey Dunn at the Art Students League. So Harvey T. Dunn also taught at the Art Students League eventually. And eventually he traveled to London to study mural painting. He was also known for being a left-handed painter, and that's unique. So kind of like the Jimi Hendrix of painters. Jimi Hendrix also played the guitar left-handed. Cornwell always had a strong work ethic and often worked 17-hour days, 7 days a week. He produced over 1,000 illustrations for nearly every major publication in the country. In 1926, he signed a long-term contract with Cosmopolitan for the unheard of annual salary at the time of $100,000, about $1,300,000 today. So that was his annual salary, that gave him that amount of money. Dean Cornwell eventually taught and lectured at the Art Students League and served as president of the Society of Illustrators from 1922 to 1926. In 1959, he was indicted into the Society of Illustrators Hall of Fame. So yeah, just to briefly go over, as I was talking about it, and then you guys heard that he worked 17 hours a day. That's different. This is something that he's doing for fun and something that he's enjoying. And of course, there's going to be jobs out there that require a lot of time, but I'm talking about your everyday jobs, even office jobs. There's certain jobs that you work only 5 hours and it's totally fine. Other jobs, working longer should be an option. It should be an option for the employee. Like if the employee is like, look, I really want to produce this painting. I want to keep working. I'm going to do 17 hours. And they're not working, based on a clock. They're just working on it because they just enjoy it. They want to produce this stuff. They want to produce this work. So I think with the option of employees having that request at hand, like I really like this work. I want to keep working. Of course, why not? Why not give that person that opportunity? But as a standard, as a thing that cannot even be requested by employers, just like now, they can't be like, nope, you got to work 10 hours. It sucks for you. Like it's the standard for 8, but if people wanted to work more, it's up to them. So it should be the same thing, except 5 hours should be the standard. 5 hours should be the max, with the option as a request from the employee, to work longer. Anyways, so that's my rant about it. That's a little bit about Dean Cornwell. There wasn't really that much, but just going immediately into this painting, you could see that there's a lot of action and adventure even in that pose. Even what's going on over there, the angle of it as well. It's not a straightforward angle, right? But you could see that the horse isn't like struggling to stay on its feet because things are slanted. The canvas the perspective is purposely slanted to illustrate some sort of action, something that's going on over there. They're obviously traveling, right? So it's like a form of adventure. You could see that he's carrying all this stuff, like looks like a sleeping bag and something else there, a bowl for eating, and it looks like a coffee pot or a water, a kettle. Looks like a kettle as well. So right away, his subject matter is different. It's not about the beauty of the female figure, even though you will see some beautiful women here. It's not romance as much. It's very much this like fun adventure stuff. I want to say this is like what Indiana Jones is like. The whole idea, the vibe of it. His work is also a mixture of like that, a bit of comic book vibe. I want to say that it does have a little bit of Gil Elvgren's element in there, or should I say Elvgren took on some of Dean Cornwell's elements in there. But I'm guessing that they were contemporaries because he wasn't too far away in terms of like, in terms of birth years. Let me just look at that. Yeah, Elvgren is 1914. Well, I guess that's quite a bit. There's quite a bit of an age gap there. He's at least 22 years older than Elvgren in this scenario. All right, so yeah, I guess he influenced Elvgren a lot more than vice versa. Or all right, so just moving on here, and I think it's also just like there's also something dreamlike about it. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it's not dreamlike, but it's something fantastical about it. And I'm gonna say it has something to do with the stars in the background, right? He drew that in there, so it adds to that. And also some of the highlights that are on the sand, it kind of makes it look like it's like fireflies that are around. So it adds to this sort of fantastic, adventurous sort of vibe. not super detailed, right? If you look at his shirt, for example, there isn't a crazy amount of detail there, but it's just enough to actually be realistic. And in their face expressions, he really captured, especially in her face, this mood, this emotion, a sense of wonder in both of their faces. Something about their eyes, like he really nailed it for both of them. Really beautiful work. But also notice how, similar to other painters, that everything kind of is cohesive. Like, despite you knowing who the subject is, everything works well together. Like the greens and blues and the colors of the sand. It's not, it kind of works within the colors of their skin, right? And kind of works with the tone of his attire. So it's well blended in, but at the same time, it removes itself from the viewers. You could see, from the subjects, which is that couple. Let's see. Moving on. So this next one, perfect example of what I was talking about here. It's action scenes. It's something that's some sort of drama that's going on. It's some sort of an adventure scene. Unfortunately, it's somebody getting killed. I'm gonna guess it has something to do with gambling. They were playing cards and it didn't turn out right for one of them, and he flipped out. Could be that. I don't know. But you could see the horror on his face. I guess he's kind of like realizing what he's just done. It could be two things. It could either be that, where he's just like, it's dawning upon him what has just happened, or he's just in rage. He's in that belligerent state where he's not even thinking straight. It's one of those things. But I really like I like that that it's some sort of scene. It's some sort of moment. And I really like the bald guy in the background, his face expression. There's something comical about it. But interesting subject matter, and it's very different from everybody else, right? If you think of like J.C. Leyendecker, very much focused on lavishing lifestyle, right? You would see a lot of these like ballroom scenarios. People with like decadent dresses and outfits. I guess there were some moments of philosophical concept when you had that painting of the pilgrim and the football player, and how much of a contrast in time it was, having them stand next to each other and just kind of saying like those were the men of those times, and they were considered to be warriors, and these are the warriors of our time now, these football players. It's kind of like cool concept there, but still it's very different than this. This is like capturing a scene in its moment, in its drama in some way. And I also like how it's kind of like Wild West themed here. Here is another perfect example of this. It just reminds me of Indiana Jones. The idea of them traveling together and finding adventures and finding love and seeing all these things they wouldn't regularly see. I really liked it, and it really does have a bit of that fantasy comic book vibe to it as well, from all the masks in the background and the swords that you see on there, and little trinkets and pottery all around. Love his color work as well. Like I like how the guy in the background, that blue that's on him, that like, I want to say it's like a turquoise blue, but probably just there's a hint of green there. I don't know, but it really stands out. I think it's a really well painted figure. beautiful expression on their face as well. Like he really rendered out their face, and it looks like the guy who's standing there in that blue outfit has like 2 different colored eyes, or maybe you only could see through one eye because the other one looks like it's like milky, like there is no pupil there. It's pretty interesting. But also he has a little bit of J.C. Landecker's element there, this contrast, right? Again, it's like this white background, completely white, and it's juxtaposition with all these figures, which I thought is also pretty cool. So moving on, and this is probably going to be the last one, y'all. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do the book tonight, but next week should be it, because this is the last artist. Dean Cornwell is the last artist for all of them. I will be doing the last few then. But here is another example of a very moody sort of scene, and this kind of reminds me a little bit of Howard T. Dunn's paintings, because remember that painting of the woman that's standing there like reaching out for the gentleman in the back. It kind of reminds me of that, like looking at her dress, looking at how things have this kind of like an halo effect around them, not heavily defined, like looking at his hair, looking at her hair, looking at her dress, there's like this halo effect on there. It kind of brings about this like dreamy quality to it. But take a look at the design, like he really spent the time. This isn't like, photo stock images where they just pasted it on top. He really spent the time and drew the design of the sofa for each and every single section, which is really laborious, but it all adds to the painting. It adds to the design of the painting. It's a really cool one. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on over there. It seems like they're plotting something, or he's plotting something. It's a little bit difficult to decipher what's going on, because he's not looking at her, right? He's not they're not having some sort of like romantic moment. In fact, he has a very brooding sort of look about him, and almost like he's plotting something in his head as she's talking to him about whatever. Could be like she's pleading him not to do something drastic, not to do something crazy, and he's having crazy thoughts. I don't know. It's kind of hard to figure out what it is. But that's what makes it so interesting. You kind of want to, as a viewer, you're gawking at them like, what's going on over there? What are they talking about? It's like collecting such serious emotion, and he's almost in his own head. He's somewhere else. He's not even present in whatever is going on. But I really like the expression on his face. I also really like how he drew the lips. Something about how he drew the lips. It looks pretty cool. And also that mirror, I guess that's right above him. Like he did such an excellent job. It really looks like a reflection. It doesn't look like a painting of a reflection. It actually looks like a photograph of a mirror. So incredible skill there. He's able to really pick the colors right in order to bring out that illusion that it's actually a reflecting mirror. All right, everybody, I'm gonna have to end it here for tonight. It was a blast, as always, talking about all these artists. I hope you guys are enjoying this as much. Drop a comment, tell me what you think, which artists that you really enjoyed, which artists really connected with you, who was your favorite out of all the ones that you've seen so far, and what did you like about them? What was your favorite painting? If you guys did enjoy this content, just remember to hit the like and subscribe button. They're both greatly appreciated. And I will see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.